We all need to learn something new from time to time, no matter our skill level. If this is your first time on our channel, we are Woman's Armor, a size-inclusive and queer-friendly brand of bespoke corsetry. Our seamstress Sasha first learned corsetry 7 years ago. She traveled across the entire country to study. Back then, she took the essential courses with the most potential for practical application and couldn't afford to stay longer or to dive deeper. Thanks to your support, this year she was able to go back. She took a course about plus-size lingerie and a course on working with leather. We will do a series of videos on everything she learned. Today, we will talk about her experience taking a course in historical corsetry and about the piece we created as a result. Occasionally, we would get requests to make a historically accurate corset from a certain era, be that the classic 18th century stays or any of the Victorian styles. We are well versed in fashion history, and we have successfully incorporated historical elements into our designs every now and then. However, historical costuming overall, and corsetry in particular, is full of tiny details, and sometimes they can't be reversed engineered just from looking. Recreating historical corsets is highly skilled, and before accepting such commissions, Sasha wanted to learn more about historical corset making. Sasha's teacher, Irina Pavshina, has 16 years of experience in corsetry and over a dozen years of experience in teaching. She has worked with local celebrities and movie studios multiple times, and most of those commissions were for period corsets. Before we begin, it's important to note that the corset we will show you in this video is not a 100% faithful recreation of some extant garment we pulled from a museum. We relied heavily on references, but we exist in the present, and we are influenced by the modern aesthetic and by generations of our predecessors in design. We will talk about which parts are more accurate and which aren't. With that in mind, let's dive in. Originally, we wanted to base our look on the viral Pretty House-Made corset from Clockwork Fairy. We found a local model who owns costumes for pretty much every era since the 1700s. The model was more mature and had a fuller bust. We haven't had the chance to work with a lot of mature women yet, and we thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to study how the flesh changes its behavior with age. The model's favorite color was blue, so we bought this beautiful blue silk for her and drafted a sketch to confirm. Unfortunately, a scheduling conflict happened, and we had to look for another model at the last minute. Sasha went on social media and started messaging women from local historical reenactment groups. She sent out maybe 20 messages, and 2 ladies replied. One of them couldn't accommodate our schedule, but the other was available. She turned out to be a lecturing fashion historian and a 1900s fashion enthusiast. She had a complete set of undergarments and a couple of period outfits and could use a well-made corset. We pivoted to the 1900s and decided to make a classic S-bend corset. After we posted our first short video with this piece, some people asked what is an S-bend corset. If you look at reference photos and drawings, you can see that the models are all bending forward slightly. Their corsets force their spines into artificial lordosis, with the breast being pushed forward and the butt being pushed backwards. You can connect those curves with an S-line, hence the name. It might look strange to the modern eye, but this style had reasoning beyond aesthetics behind it. If you look at the earlier hourglass corsets, you can see that the waist kind of nips in all around the body, with the chest and the stomach jutting out above and below the waist. Some people were concerned about the pressure on the abdomen. They thought that creating one long straight line from bust to thighs in the front would help relieve that pressure, making it easier on the internal organs. Since female bodies have a bit of extra volume on the tummy below the waist most of the time, that straight line had to be created by bending the waist and pushing out the butt. Without diving into the health claims, let's just note that this position of the spine can feel good for some bodies and create or exacerbate back issues for others. Sasha took the measurements of our model and drafted the pattern using the modern formulas. Sasha and the model agreed that they wanted to have a really dramatic silhouette, so the pattern had almost 4 inches of waist reduction, even though that wasn't a common practice back then. It was, however, very common to wear all sorts of padding and fill out the corset, rather than squish the body. They decided to use the best of both worlds. Historically, the hip pads were usually added as a separate garment on top of the corset, but everybody felt it would be a shame to cover up that beautiful blue silk and the embroidery Sasha had planned. Sasha, the model, and the teacher collectively decided to add hip padding on the inside of the corset. Sasha then modified the pattern pieces to create the S-bend by taking out a chunk of fabric from the waist area in the back. The breast area was intentionally drafted to fit loosely with the bust improver in mind. Then, during the final paper transfer, Sasha repositioned the seam lines to include the bust gores, the hip gores, and a different placement of the boning channels. After the first mock-up was made, the model came in for the second fitting, and it was time for a round of adjustments. We cannot underscore enough how much this was a team effort for Sasha, her teacher Irina, and the model. When everyone participating has great taste and is well-versed in fashion history, true magic happens. They took a bit more out in the waist area in the back, corrected the waist tape placement for a more intentional S-bend pull, shortened the breast wedges, moved the bottom edge up a bit, and remapped some of the boning channels. If you remember, in the beginning we talked about our plans to make the pretty housemaid corset. Originally, we picked that as the reference because it had many of the decorations and techniques that Sasha wanted to practice under supervision or to try out for the first time. Some of those finishings, like lace trim on the bust, can be seen on both styles, while others are exclusive to the earlier designs. Cording is one of the latter. You don't really see cording on S-bend corsets. Sasha has had experience with cording, but had some questions about the prep for it. She also wanted to try installing fully corded panels. Given that this project was, above all, a learning opportunity, we decided to add some of those elements even if they are not typical for the period. This also made the corset more interesting visually by adding texture. After Sasha made the second mock-up, the model came back for the third time to try it on. At the fitting, Sasha and her teacher adjusted the neckline from sweetheart to a straight edge. They refined the bottom edge shape, added more boning, and played around with the volume for a bit. They looked at the intermediary silhouette and decided to add even more hip padding for that striking retouched look that makes modern people clutch their pearls. Finally, they mapped out the cording, and Sasha started working on the final piece. In order to understand what issues she faced with cording, we need to understand the technique. Cording is a method of stiffening the fabric by sandwiching multiple rows of cord between two fabric layers and sewing the layers together, much like you do when making boning channels. The cords can be laid next to each other, forming parallel rows, or they can be arranged into patterns and serve as a decoration along with the practical function. We start seeing a lot of corded pieces in museums in the early 1800s when the dresses became looser and lighter and corsets didn't need to be too rigid anymore. Because the base fabric lies flat and the fashion fabric follows the curves of the cord, you can't pre-cut the pattern pieces. You have to sew all the cords on first and then cut the pattern pieces out. You can also experience unwanted tension in the fabric after you sew the corded panels. This happened to Sasha a couple of times, and she wanted Irina to show her a fix for that. Apparently, the fashion fabric for cording needs to be placed on the bias. The stretch of the bias is enough to make the curves flow smoothly. Another clever trick that Sasha used to keep the corset as light and breathable as possible was playing around with the placement of interfacing. The corset consists of two layers, an outer layer of blue silk and an inner layer of pale blue cotton. Most of the time, Sasha interfaced the silk layer and left the cotton underlayer soft. However, on the corded segments, she interfaced the cotton base to stiffen it and kept the top bias-cut silk layer soft and pliable. After she figured out the cording, the rest of the process went smoothly. To measure the desired width and length of the garters, Sasha had an intermediate fitting with the model when the corset was almost completed. This was, as you can calculate, the fourth fitting out of the 5 they had in total. The teacher had a limited stock of lace, and they didn't know what kind of lace Sasha would be able to find in local stores, so they didn't have a plan for the lace trim on the bust. Sasha tried a couple of placement variations. In the end, they decided on a triple trim. One lace ribbon is gathered and attached with the scallops going up. One lace ribbon is gathered and attached with the scallops going down. And the space between them is covered with a third lace ribbon that has a satin ribbon threaded through it. Together, all those layers create a lot of extra volume and make the waist look even smaller, which is exactly what we wanted. Sasha had to finish the embroidery after the course ended. This led to an unexpected but helpful discovery. She found that extra strong threads sold in leather stores works much better for flossing than anything she had tried before. This thread is thicker, so it's more noticeable on the garment, and you don't have to do as many passes. It's coated in wax, so it stays nice and smooth with no fraying or knotting. It also glides more smoothly than regular embroidery thread. This was a win all around. Sasha would work on the main project during the day, then go home and embroider this corset until it was time to go to sleep. This went on for a week, and then it was time for the 5th fitting with all the right undergarments, makeup, and hairstyle. Sasha made a bust improver and a corset cage. The bust improver is essentially a 100-year-old version of a push-up pad. 2 pads are sewn together onto a cotton base matching the wearer's natural breast shape and stuffed into a corset. The corset cage is a more interesting invention. It is a boned mesh structure designed to go over the corset but under the blouse. It aimed to create a completely smooth shape, hiding anything related to the underwear. We had never seen this kind of mesh before, and it actually was provided by Irina from her special movie stash. In total, this project took Sasha 135 hours of work, with 8 hours spent on decoration samples alone. She made 2 mock-ups and had 5 fittings with the model. With the modern pace of life, it's important to remember that good things take time. The fashion industry forces employees at all levels to accept urgency and to work under conditions of a permanent time crunch. From overworked line workers to fashion students sleeping in the classrooms to top designers struggling with depression and drug problems, everyone is forced to cut corners and to dish out more and more stuff to keep up. Hopefully, this video has shown you not only how much work goes into a garment, but also how rewarding the result is when the maker has enough time. We take great pride and joy in fitting all shapes and sizes. We think everyone should have at least one garment made just for them. If you made it all the way over here, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. We are very grateful to our lovely model Daria and to the amazing teacher Irina for their time and input. And we thank every client and every viewer who helped us afford this course. We know sometimes people watch our videos to get ideas for their own sewing projects. So please let us know in the comments if you're going to use any of the tricks we mentioned. If you're interested in getting your own corset, please drop us a message on our website to discuss timelines and pricing. We hope to see you soon in our future videos.